Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Rogers, and I'm a member of the board of the Grosse Pointe League of Women Voters. This forum is for the general election on Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. Again, welcome to this forum. The League of Women Voters is honored to host this forum on the Grosse Pointe Public School bond proposal. Thank you to the Grosse Pointe Public School System for the use of this space at Brownell, and to Steve Garrissey from the Grosse Pointe Public Schools for video recording this event. The League will present this recording for viewing within a day or two on the League's YouTube channel. We ask that you now please silence your cell phones and devices, and individual recording of this program is not permitted. Again, if you have questions for our speaker, please write them down on a card available from one of our volunteers. The League has also gathered questions from the community, including through our website. All of these questions will be and have been sorted for relevancy and redundancy. I will pose these questions to Dr. Tuttle at the end of her presentation. We also encourage citizens to follow up with individual members of the school board and the administration if their questions aren't answered here. I would like to remind the community that Grosse Pointe League of Women Voters is a 501c nonprofit. We are part of a national organization whose mission is to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. We offer voter education forums and programs as a service to the community. The League neither endorses nor opposes candidates or political parties. We welcome all men and women 16 years and older to membership, and we have a membership table in the back. There are some people in the League I would like to thank for their assistance this evening, and they include our members Patty Cardoza, Carol Bender, Joanne Swanson, Holly Corey, Mary Zahler, Jerry LaPratt, Catherine Dumke, and Judy Florian. Dr. Tuttle has spent more than 30 years influencing students and educators from preschool through 12th grade, with having degrees in both elementary and secondary education and administrative certification. Dr. Tuttle also holds a doctorate in educational leadership from Central Michigan University, where she studied the role of humor in effective leadership. As a passionate advocate for public education, she serves as Region 6 legislative representative for the Michigan Association of School Administrators and frequently collaborates with state policymakers. Now in her 16th year as a superintendent and her second leading the Grosse Pointe Public School System, Dr. Tuttle is passionate about helping every student discover their potential. Guided by the belief that people come first, Dr. Tuttle inspires continuous growth, compassion, and excellence in every facet of learning. I introduce to you Dr. Andrea Tuttle.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. I feel very far away from you, so can everyone hear me okay? I feel like I need to. Mr. Garrissey told me I had to speak behind the podium because the camera's on the podium, right, Mr. Garrissey? So I'm going to try to do so, although I like to be out and about. Just out of curiosity, as you were entering today, I asked some of you if you were graduates of Grosse Pointe. Can you just raise your hand? I'm just curious. So we have a lot of legacy families in the audience, and I presume that you chose to stay in Grosse Pointe in part because of the schools and what they afforded you and what they've afforded possibly your children and now on to grandchildren. So I'm excited to be, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to tell you about the process of how we came to the projects that are included in the bond. Then I'll talk a little bit about the bond itself and then open it up to questions. So Kathy did a nice job introducing me, but I wanted to share one other component of it. I was a superintendent in a previous district for 14 years. I loved that district. I intended to stay in that district until I saw the posting for Grosse Pointe Public Schools superintendency. And Grosse Pointe has a special place in my heart because my mom grew up in this area and actually attended what is now Grosse Pointe Academy, but was Sacred Heart Academy at the time, if any of you recall that. And so I spent a lot of time as a youth in Grosse Pointe and absolutely loved the community. And so decided to apply and was fortunate enough to be offered and accepted the position. Very excited to be here. An incredible educational experience for all of our students. History has proven that time and time again. I don't need to tell any of you that. I presume that you know that. So I also want to thank all of you for being here this evening. It's a beautiful fall day in October, and you could be elsewhere, so I appreciate you being here to be educated about our bond proposal. A little bit about the process itself. When I first took over the reins of superintendency, I knew right away that we had a sinking fund that was expiring. We had an operational millage that was expiring. We had an enhancement millage from the RESA that needed to be passed. And then the last thing was a bond proposal that we needed to do this year in order to maintain our current mill rate. And so that brought us to, in December, January, starting to plan as a Board of Education. And of course, the board approves. It's not something I just decide. The board approves to move forward with the bond proposal. Once that decision was made, then we had to decide how are we going to do so. And we very much wanted community involvement in that process, of which we had, and I'll talk a little bit about what we call the BAC, the Bond Advisory Committee, and how that was made up. But the things that we wanted, we as a board and I as a superintendent, our administrative team wanted to accomplish is that in this bond proposal, we wanted to ensure that every one of our facilities were touched in some capacity, that we looked at safety and security first, always. Secondly, clean, dry, warm. When we need it to be warm, we need our boilers to work and so forth. And then we looked at what else do we need to maintain what I consider to be majestic buildings, historic buildings. For those of you who know, many school districts are demolishing beautiful facilities such as Grosse Pointe has, and instead building perhaps more efficient, it's actually cheaper for new buildings. But part of the mystique of Grosse Pointe and what makes Grosse Pointe special and unique are our facilities. But they take a lot to maintain. So the document that I received early in my tenure, I call it the 252 document. That was a document that was created by Plant Moran, who are our owner's rep for the bond and our sinking fund. They had created in 2022, and it was basically a facilities assessment. They went into all of our buildings, assessed the needs, and they came up with $252 million worth of needs. What people don't understand, or sometimes it's hard to comprehend, is you don't just start crossing off the list until you get down to zero, because things continually get added to the list. Everything has a lifespan, whether it be parking lots, whether it be roofs, whether it be boilers, whether it be furniture, lighting, tuck pointing, safety and security upgrades, and the list goes on. So the board tried to take the 252 list. The first step was to ask the voters, and we thank all of you sincerely for approving the sinking fund mills. That will generate roughly $110 million over the next 10 years. And those funds are different from what the bond funds will be utilized for. So I want to point out the next thing to all of you. There are boards in the back, one for each of our schools, and I have two in the front. So I encourage you to please look at these boards. You can also, if you did not receive a brochure, there is a brochure that has a QR code on the back that has a lot of Q&As that have been asked throughout the process. We've been doing a lot of these presentations, and as people ask questions that are not included, we continue to add and update the Q&A. So please, if there are some questions this evening that have not been asked before, we'll certainly do that as well. And thank you to Mrs. Fannin, who's actually in the back. Many of you know Rebecca Fannin, who's been instrumental in all of this. She will absolutely update that for us as they come forward. And if there are questions that I don't know, which has happened before, we certainly will take those questions back, find the correct answer, and ensure that they are on the website as well. So what these boards contain, I'm going to move just a little bit here, but you can see this broken down because people will say to me, well, what's in the sinking fund versus the bond? And I'm going to show you in a minute the difference between a sinking fund and a bond. But you can see on this we have our 2018 bond program that many of you are familiar with. Again, thank you to the voters for passing that. Then we have our 2019 sinking fund, which was at 1 mil, if you recall. Subsequently, passed last year, a 2024 sinking fund. So, and then if the bond passes in 2025, you can see what projects will come out of the bond projects versus the previous bond versus the 2019 sinking fund and the 2024 for each building. Because people, although I think people in Grosse Pointe more than the vast majority of districts understand that we are a team. It's not just all about how this is going to affect me personally or my kids. We understand that the education of all of our kids and providing them ample opportunities to meet their potential is one of our greatest goals and our greatest assets in this community. So please, if you have not done so already, you can find this on our website. If you have time to look at it this evening in bigger font, you're welcome to do so. And if you have any questions about those boards, you're welcome to ask those as well. So as I indicated, the 252 list, the 252 million, we were able to start knocking some of those off in the sinking fund that we just passed. But as I said, that's 252. We knocked off maybe about 110 million over the course of 10 years. That leaves a considerable amount still that we need to address. In addition, things continue to be added to it. So that list never just goes away, just like your house. You have to replace your roofs, your carpets, your flooring, your dishwasher, whatever the case may be. So although this is a comprehensive list, it isn't everything, and we had to make decisions. So how were those decisions made? What ended up in this proposal when we couldn't accomplish everything that we wanted to accomplish? So what the administrator decided is of that 120 million that is going to be revenue that will be generated if this bond passes, administration with the help of Plant Moran, who, as I indicated, did the facilities assessment, as well as our administrative team, primarily our buildings and grounds facility coordinator named Mr. Madison, who is outstanding. He said there's about 60 million that are non-negotiable, that we just have to do. And so 60 million of the 120 were pulled back, and we took those right off the list, the 252 list, and those were all primarily safety and security, things that absolutely, boilers, things that had to be accomplished. That left 60 million for the BAC, the Bond Advisory Committee, then to discuss in 4 meetings, which lasted 2 hours each. And the BAC consisted of people representing every one of the points and Harper Woods. In addition, it included people that represented the south end of town, the north end of town, athletics, as well as the fine arts, including performing arts, visual arts, and all of the arts. So it was a very diverse group of people. Included in that group also were administrators at central office, as well as building level administrators. So we tried to hit everybody, and it was an incredible process. If were any of you part of that are sitting in the audience? So it was an incredible process because there was great, thoughtful dialogue. We didn't always agree, but we came to a consensus at the end, and that's what I present to you today, is how the full 120 million, the 60 million that was designated by administrators, as well as the 60 million that was set aside for the BAC to determine, has been designated for projects if this bond were to pass. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's on the bond, much of which is in the brochures. You've probably seen literature. It's been in papers. We've done numerous talks about it. So hopefully some of this is not new to you. As I indicated, if and when the bond passes, it will generate a $120 million bond. That's with a no mill increase. We're currently at 3.14 mills. That will not increase. Secondly, as I indicated, 60 million were identified as critical needs that our administrator held back. 60 million was the community input, mainly to attract and retain students. So they're the prettier projects, the things that you see. You don't see the tunnels, you don't see the boilers, but the projects that people see, whether it be a sporting venue, a fine arts venue, an auditorium, things like that, that you actually get to see where your money is being spent. Again, this is a zero tax increase from existing millage rates. I forgot I have it up here, so I actually can walk a little bit. On the November 4th ballot, if you have not voted already via absentee ballot, you will have an opportunity to vote on this bond. And I hope that you take this education tonight and make decisions that you believe the district needs. So the average age of our buildings, people have asked that, is 82 years old. That's a pretty remarkable that we, as a community, you, have maintained these buildings to the majestic forms that they are today, and many of them are actually historic facilities. I also want to let you know that 84% of the budget of schools is spent on people. It's not spent on things, it's not spent on equipment, it's spent on the people. And if you received one of the pamphlets that was out there, 88% of our teachers have a master's degree or above. So our students, we attract the best so our students can receive the best in education. And it starts who stands in front of the classroom. That only leaves 16% left over to do something with. In Michigan, there is no money given to schools for capital projects. So as I shared with you, the sinking fund was approved in November of 2024. Again, huge thank you. The big focus on that sinking fund was safety and security and instructional technology. After all the sinking fund expenditures, there was approximately $200,000 in needs, $60 million of which I just shared with you were critical needs, and it was needed to protect the investment of our community, our facilities. And you know that pay me now or pay me later, if we don't fix things now and keep things maintained, they ultimately cost more down the road. And this bond focuses the majority of it on infrastructure. This is the brochure that you see in front of you, that you should have at your seat. If you haven't, please help yourself. I think they're back at the back table and they're as you come in. I'm not going to read this to you because I want to be respectful of people's time, and I know that you can read this yourselves. But just to highlight some of the things, we tried to delineate what is in the elementary buildings, what the middle schools will see, what the high schools will see, and what the community will see. So the elementary schools, which is also inclusive of Barnes Early Childhood Center, you're going to see ceiling and lighting upgrades. You're going to see modern furniture, fixtures, and learning equipment, mechanical and electrical system upgrades, new boilers. And when you have new boilers, they are also more efficient, so you actually save money in operational costs when you have efficient equipment. And then restroom renovations, which are really needed in several of our buildings. High school, these are just the highlights again. There's much more, but art and career tech, which is our CTE, career technical education spaces, our locker room upgrades. That was a big one that actually got discussed. I have not been in our locker rooms, but I've heard that our locker rooms need a lot of work at both North and South for not only our student athletes, but for our visiting athletes as well. We obviously new boilers to reduce operational costs, high school media center renovations. So just so you know, in the previous bond, North had media center renovations, I apologize. South did not receive, so this will be equal to North's renovations. And then the South High School office relocation for safety. South is a very safe building, but they don't have a secure vestibule like every one of our other buildings do. How many of you have been in South recently? Some of you. Once you enter, you get buzzed into the building, and every other building you get into a vestibule and you have to be buzzed in again. Unfortunately, as South, when you come in, you are exposed to the building and you have to walk 2 hallways until you get to the office. So we want to beef up the security at South just as we've done for every other facility. All right, middle school. The middle school has had an elevator in that building that has not been usable for several years, so they would fix the Pierce Middle School elevator. Ceiling and lightings, mechanical and electrical system, you're going to see repeats, new boilers, repurpose our Paul Sells Middle School pool space. And I'm going to take a moment to talk about that one because that's kind of the elephant in the room for some people. And it's probably the greatest question that we've been asked. This was the Parcells pool, which has been closed for about 4 years, was a very thoughtful and reflective discussion amongst the Bond Advisory Committee. Lots of very passionate people. Why don't we have a pool? And so I want to explain why that pool was ultimately closed, because I was under the misconception that that it was the pool itself, the foundation of the pool. In fact, all the issue lies in the ceiling. So when those pools, and when I say those pools in the district, when some of them were put in, a dehumidification center was not properly put in at the same time. So a lot of I'm going to say the word guts because that's really specific, but a lot of the insides of the ceiling have been corroded and are creating a danger. Steve, you want me to stay in one place? I'll stay right here. And now we're creating a danger. You can't use that space. So it's not the actual structure of the pool. Additionally, the pool itself costs a lot of operating costs. You may know that we're probably one, maybe the one and only, there might be another in the state, who actually has a pool at every middle school and at every high school. We have 5 pools in our facility, in our district. Amazing vision from whomever designed that before us, and the district could afford it. So there was a lot of discussion about that pool, and Plant Moran and some of the participants said, if we aren't going to use it for a pool, what can we use it for that is really special, unique to the north side, unique to what students need today and learning, and what can Parcells be the hub of? And after tons of discussion, lots of ideas, the entire committee unanimously said, I think it would be a great STEM facility, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and math. We have lots of robotics teams in our district, and they struggle for places to practice. You can see 3D printers, maker spaces, those engineering skills that are so desperately needed. I say we're kind of a consuming generation, and that we've consumed what generations before us have built. And this is our opportunity to build, but we need people who are those builders. And so this sets Parcells apart from any of our other buildings, and they will have this actual space because, as you know, jobs in that area are very lucrative as well. So it gives the kids a head start, but other districts, other schools can use it as well after school, but our Parcells students will be able to use it during the day. People have said, why haven't you shown what that's going to look like? That's a really good question, and the reason is to design something like that is very expensive, and it also would require lots of meetings with the community. What does the community want to see? What do our teachers and administrators want to see? So there wasn't a lot of time for that, but probably more importantly, there's an expense associated with it. So to design something like that fully could cost upwards of $200,000 to $300,000. You can take the risk and design it beforehand, which very few schools do, but some do. I think Troy may have done that, hoping that the bond passes. But if it doesn't, you've in essence wasted $200,000 to $300,000, of which we didn't have. So we didn't have the time to have the proper involvement and input from the community stakeholders, and 2, we didn't have the money. So what we have agreed upon is that space is going to be a STEM learning environment in some capacity, and it will be determined after the bond passes by community groups, administrators, students, families, parents, all of you community stakeholders. And on that note, I do want to share that once this passes, if it passes, it will take a full year to design anything that's included in this bond. So you're not going to see things get built in the summer. For those of you who are in construction or know, you have to put out RFPs, requests for proposals, get bids, but before that happens, you have to architects design it so people know what they're bidding on. It's a very extensive process. The other disadvantage schools have is that we can only do things really in the summer because the students are out. And so to minimize this disruption to students' education, the majority of building for bonds is during the summer. Not to say all of it, because they do try to work around that. All right. I want to highlight, I talked about the high schools. So some community things. Demolition and addition of post-tension concrete at Elworthy tennis courts. I'm going to use his name. Ian Stodders was a huge advocate of the Elworthy tennis courts, and when he brought to us and the athletic director at South the condition of the Elworthy tennis courts, of which our South athletes, boys and girls tennis play, it was evident to the committee that something needed to be done there. It also is highly utilized by the community itself. I will say that Mr. Studdards asked for quite a bit more to be included in the bond than the back was willing to give. So I think that he on the back end is going to do some fundraising for further improvements, but the district is going to get those courts, the lighting, the fencing, the actual playing surface up to speed so they are safe. And remember, safety is our #1 for our student athletes. North has more updated courts, and they're right on their site, on the site. Landscaping and fencing, Performing Arts Center in the auditorium. How many of you have been in we call it the C building, but it's the space that the North Auditorium is. Anyone been in a show? Okay, so that is in the bond for upgrades. But not only that, it's all the perimeter spaces around that, all of the classrooms, so it's very fine arts. If you've seen the ceilings in there, I would tell you that first impressions make a difference. When I first came to this district and I walked in that space, my first initial reaction was, this isn't Grosse Pointe. We had tiles that have water damage, some of them have holes in them. It wasn't indicative of the spaces that we want our students to learn in. So again, this was a unanimous decision. It was a very high priority so you can see for our back. You can see North has some things, South has some things, elementary, middle, and the community. Okay. A significant focus of the 2025 program is to build upon previously completed projects to help keep staff, students, and the community safe and secure. So of that 120, about 3.25 million of upgrades are planned for and included but not limited to upgrades to the main entrance security systems. If you've seen the swipe cards, I had to use one to get in here today. They're very secure, but we don't have all swipe cards. We have a lot of keys. And in my tenure as a superintendent, people lose keys. They don't tell people, so lots of people have keys that should not have keys. What's great about swipe cards is the minute someone retires and we don't get their keys back or they leave for whatever reason, we can shut off swipe cards so they're no longer available to access our facilities. If someone loses a swipe card, we can shut it off immediately. So those swipe cards have added safety and security measures beyond a lot of the other things that we were able to do. Door and hardware replacement, access control system upgrades, as I already said, relocating the main office at Grosse Pointe South High School. Okay, so these are just some examples. At probably the last 4 or 5 Board of Education meetings, I've highlighted a project, and I've tried to do something highlighted on the north side and something on the south side. So I'm not going to read these all to you because we will put this up for you to peruse at your leisure. But you can see the boiler and HVAC upgrades. Not pretty, but absolutely needed, and I'll give you an example of that. Right now, Parcells has 3 boilers. It can function on 2. 1 boiler's down. It can function on 2. Another boiler goes down. What are our options? Shut school, move kids. Well, we try to replace that. And where does that money come from? It comes from the general fund if a bond doesn't pass, which is your people, your 84% of your people. So then obviously that reduces the general fund budget as well. This particular bond replaces boilers at Barnes, Defer, Kirby, Ferry, and Parcells. Several of the other boilers have been replaced. Air conditioning only where it's most needed. There's been a little bit of misconception in this. There's $1 million allocated in the bond for air conditioning. $1 million in today's environment does not go very far. And what we have said is when the bond passes, we will get everybody in a room and decide how we're going to spend the $1 million on the most needy classrooms. Let me give you an example of that. The culinary arts classroom at South, which has stoves running, cooking, hot environment, does not have air conditioning. That would probably be a priority. Probably. Not guaranteeing that because that'll be a decision by the community. The other thing with air conditioning in these historic facilities is aesthetically, even if we did have enough money, 2 things. It's very costly to try to put air conditioning in historic facilities. If any of you have historic homes, you probably know that. But additionally, aesthetically, you would have units outside of your bricks and mortars of your building and tubes going into your facility. So not a good look. You try to hide those as much as possible because we do have some in the district and perhaps you haven't even seen them because you hide them behind bushes as much as possible. But you're also compromising the structure of those facilities every time you make holes in those beautiful buildings. And then again, not a pretty one, not one that you're going to see, but replacing old domestic water piping with new copper. These improvements will help the district save on utility, maintenance, and operation costs, keeping general fund dollars in the classroom. There were a few of the BAC committee members that said, I'm looking at things that are going to improve efficiency. That was their #1 goal, and so we were able to show how that would happen as well. This is as I indicated and I shared with you, but this is some pictures from the Grosse Pointe North Art Studio, TV production room. You can just see the cupboards need some love. The flooring needs some love. So this would all be renovated. These were the ceilings that I talked about, not indicative of, I think, the appearance that we want or we want our students. I always say when you're in a nice environment, it raises your level of how you think you should conduct yourselves. So the LED lighting, initially LED lighting was proposed to go everywhere in the district, but that was incredibly expensive. And if we'd agreed to that, we being the BAC, many of the other programs or facility improvements or furniture, whatever the case may be, would not have been able to happen. So when we say LED lighting, we're only talking about in common spaces, hallways, main entrances, bathrooms. That's where you're going to see the lighting the most. Again, you can't do everything, so you have to prioritize. Not that it's not needed, but we have to prioritize. I already talked a little bit about the Elworthy tennis courts in a previous slide, but here are some pictures of it. Parcells pool renovation. Here's some concept drawings of what it might look like. I will say one other thing about that space. Right now, our hub for our technology sits in the basement of Parcells, which is wet and concerning. So there had been talk of utilizing some of that space, it's a pretty large space as a pool, to bring, and I'm not positive that's going to happen, that'll all be in the design phase, which happens once a bond passes, but that will all be brought up to the main floor with temperature controls so that we don't have any issues, because when the technology goes out, it's very hard to communicate, it brings safety and security concerns and so forth. Again, LED lighting and ceilings. I just do want to point out the numbers. A major portion of the district has recently had LED lighting and ceiling upgrades. This $10.75 million, and that's a reduction. So it's a pretty hefty amount, but that's actually reduced quite a bit from what was initially proposed. It would replace the remaining areas of the district common areas that have not previously been completed. These areas being renovated are the Defer Elementary School, corridors, common areas. I'm not going to read all of those. It's all of the elementary, secondary, and high school, as well as Barnes. Second paragraph, upgrading ceiling lighting and replacing outdated fixtures in school buildings can lead to substantial operational costs by improving energy efficiency and reducing maintenance demands, and reducing the burden on the general fund. As I said, your program has a QR code. If you like it up here, you're welcome to have the QR code. And then I wanted to show, somebody had asked me, Jay, and I remember that as he came in, because that's my son's name too. So he had asked me as he was entering, and we actually had a slide on this, the current bond, if this new bond does not pass, would expire roughly in 2041. And when I say roughly, because taxable values impact it, how fast you can pay off that bond, can you add more to the principal, just like your house. You have a payoff date, but you could pay things off early. And then if the bond passes, two things that I want to show here. It will be a 3-series bonds, meaning that you're going to sell bonds in 3 series. The board decided at the last board meeting that the first series will be $25 million and will have to be sold before December. And then to be determined what the second and the third series amounts will be. But collectively, the sum total will be $120 million. And it's all determined on what projects you want to accomplish next. And you can sell bonds whenever you want to. So I say that because we started with a $25 million, because as I shared, projects won't actually become fruition until the summer of 2027. Two things I want to show on here. If you look 2040, you see that's when a portion of the bond, so if someone, I don't intend to be the superintendent that long, but if the new superintendent and board, and maybe we will have board members that'll still be here in 2040, if they chose to and they wanted to go for a no mill increase again, that would be the year that they would do that. Now, you can go for them any time and add to it, but if you wanted to go stick with the no mill increase, again, that's all dependent on taxable values and how quickly it's getting paid off. And the final, every series that you sell, whenever you sell it, is 20 years. So it would all come to fruition roughly in 2049. All right. I have nothing further, so I'm ready for the questions.
They've been coming in kind of fast and furious as we were sitting there.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to not repeat ones.
I'm going to try to answer them.
Okay. Can you first explain the difference between a bond for funding schools, between bonds and sinking funds?
Absolutely. I have worked on so many sinking funds and bonds in my last 16 years. So the easiest way I share to explain this or define the difference for audiences is as follows. When I started as a SUP, or first sinking fund that I passed, if you were to cut off, and I apologize, I'll take this with me. All right, I'll stand here. If you were to cut off the roof of a facility and turn it upside down and shake it, anything that fell out could not be used in sinking funds. You would all fall out. We could not pay your salaries, nor can we in a bond, but you would fall out. Equipment would fall out. At that point, technology would fall out. When it originally started sinking funds, you couldn't use it for technology. You couldn't use it for transportation. You couldn't use it for supplies. You couldn't use it for furniture. You could use it for things that were bolted to the ground. You could use it for inset lockers, but not lockers that were not inset. So it was very specific. Since that initial sinking fund started, the legislators have broadened the scope of what sinking funds can be utilized for. So now, the first thing they allowed was technology. So in our previous sinking fund, we could purchase some technology, and we can in our new sinking fund. The next thing they added was transportation. We're not a transportation district in that we don't bus our students, but it can also be used for vehicles. So it can be used for your buildings and grounds vehicles. It can be used for, if we own buses, we don't, as you know, that we contract those out through Auxilio. So you can use those for those two things. Conversely, a bond, didn't we have a slide like this? Did I miss it? Oh, okay. A bond can be used for really whatever is put into the ballot and the voters want, except for people. Neither of them can be used for salaries or benefits, but a bond can really, it's more for major structural builds, major structural renovations, upkeep, but it can also be used for things that would fall out of a building. This podium would fall out. So a bond, really, the scope of a bond is much greater than a sinking fund.
Okay.
One other thing that's really important. I'm sorry. Bond is borrowed money. Sinking funds are not. So borrowed money you pay interest in. You also get interest when you invest the revenue coming in from the bond. So it's a weighing that out. Sinking funds is neither. We take in roughly $3.2 million a year. We as a district can expend $3.2 million, or we can bank it if we have a project that costs $6 million, so we don't want to utilize 1 year's revenue. You cannot do that with a bond. Bond is interest-based. Sinking fund is not. So hopefully that explained that.
I think you answered this, but this is from someone submitted it on the website. The district is facing several lawsuits. Are the legal costs of defending those suits and any potential liability from judgments or settlements included in what will be covered by the bond?
No. We have insurance that covers those.
As a corollary to your really good information about the pool at Parcells, are there any plans for a pool on the north end, and what would it take to get another pool in the district, or is that even feasible?
At this time, I know of no plans for an additional pool. Obviously, we do have pools on the north end. I mean, we have Brownell, sort of, that's split between our students, and we obviously have North High School. There has been no discussion about a pool, just how we can create the existing pool space into something really special for the north end.
Oh, and then this one, I didn't read the whole thing, because the north pool has no shallow end. It's really not, you can't really teach beginners there, I think is what they meant. So that.
I know that, I will tell you, and this is not a for sure, I'm going to say that again, not a for sure, but we are looking at some grants to transport students to some of the other, from Parcells to some of the other middle schools for some swimming opportunities. I don't know if that'll come to fruition, but it is something that we're looking into, so those students can absolutely use the other two middle schools as well. I failed to introduce, we have two board members in the audience, Trustee Clint Derringer and President Colleen Warden. So if you ever want to jump in and answer, you're welcome to do so. Just interrupt me. If you have something to say, raise your hand.
Well, you know, this one was coming up. What's happening to Trombley? Will this bond issue be used to investigate reopening it?
That's a very good question. And it's another question that's been probably asked the most, that in the pool. And my answer to that, and either of you can assist with this, but right now, what the district, Trombley has been closed for a while, and the only thing that the district has done is maintained the exterior of the building. So it looks beautiful from the outside. Step inside and it doesn't look so beautiful. It looks like a building that has sat vacant for many years. And that was intentional. There was no money to put into Trombley like the other elementary schools and Barnes. So the board collectively, unanimously decided we are not selling that building for a couple of reasons. A, this community is very landlocked. So if at some point there was a need for another facility, there isn't a lot of places. Also, it's a beautiful historic building, kind of in the middle of a neighborhood, which I know that that Popard was as well. So I was not here for those discussions, but the board very much wanted to keep that in some capacity. So what is in the bond, they, being Plant Moran, owner's rep, told us that to get that facility up to Taj Mahal, if you want to call it, would cost about $13 million. The board nor the bond advisory committee wanted to do that. What they wanted to do was get it up to par with the other elementaries, and it can be open for anything that the administration and the board decides collectively. There's been a lot of data collected regarding the enrollment numbers in the district, of which we are starting to plateau, but we still are seeing dips for the 2 years that I've been here. For the last 5 years, I think we lost 1,300 kids. We're really seeing that stabilize, but at some point, we hope to see the growth. And a lot of that happened through COVID, and we're trying to get those students back and let them know there's no better district than Grosse Pointe Public Schools. But so Trombley, once the bond passes, there will be, just like the Parcells pool, there will be numerous conversations about data. If more data is needed, that will occur in next year, planning process. There will be discussions, community will be involved, the unions will be involved, administration will be involved, the board will be involved, and collectively we'll make the best decision for our district. But you don't want a dilapidated building still in your community. And so if the community, I don't think, wants to sell that facility, we want to keep that beautiful, majestic, historic, so it is our duty to do something with it. And unfortunately, it's sat vacant for 4 years, and now's the time to do that. Do you want to add anything? Thank you. And the investment is roughly $6 million. I said the $13 million to get it. It's about, I don't know if I said that, but $6 million to get it up to speed, to be utilized in some capacity.
I'm sorry. I think that you answered this next question. It was about the $5.8 million for Trombley. On the bond section of the Grosse Pointe Public School website, it shows $5.8 million for Trombley, which is vacant. And then it's why should we vote to invest in a building that the board closed rather than use the $5.8 million for projects where we have students right now?
I think I kind of answered that, but you want me to continue?
Okay,
or?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Now, somebody seems to think that there's updates available about the Brownell pool. Is that, are there
I'm sorry,
any
say that again?
Brownell pool updates?
There are no updates about the Brownell pool.
This must be the end of a conversation between people. How many buildings are owned by the Grosse Pointe Public School system? How many actual buildings other than the, I know this is the end of a strange conversation, that there are a lot of buildings that the school district has to keep up.
To my
But they're
knowledge,
not
there are
students.
13. There are 13 buildings. There's a preschool, 3 middle schools, 7 elementary, 2 high schools. Our administrative building used to be on 389. Everyone says 389. And obviously we sold that for housing. If you've driven down, they're beautiful housing. So there are 13 facilities. Our administration building is at North now, in the North High School.
All right, this is back to the bonds. When will the existing bonds be paid off?
So that was the slide that I just shared.
Okay.
That's it, yeah. So it goes back 2041. And again, estimated.
All right, someone else with inside knowledge. The current proposal earmarks $120,000, yeah, to replace the South High School track. Is it true that we rent out our track to other schools, and if so, do these revenues go toward the upkeep or replacement of the existing track? I suppose that question could go toward the PAC as well, since if the track is used by other schools.
So I may need help with this one, but I'm going to talk to the PAC first.
Okay.
We do rent out the PAC. For instance, the Grosse Pointe Theater, as you know, they're building a new facility, but they have rented it. And there's a cost associated with it. It's all dictated by policy, and the costs are dictated. I don't know that we've rented specifically out the track, but there are categories. So I'm just going to say in general, if they're majority Grosse Pointe students, we don't rent it out. We allow our students to utilize our spaces. But if there's revenue generation on the other side, for instance, if there's a club that generates revenue for themselves, we do ask them to pay a fee associated with it. And where does that money go? Absolutely, it goes into upkeep of all of our facilities. I can't say specifically that we put track revenue expenditures into the track line item, but anything that two of you want to add on that? Okay.
All right, this goes to, you've indicated that many of these bond funds are earmarked for urgent safety and maintenance needs. What will you do, and where will these funds come from if this bond does not get passed by the voters?
Mm-hmm. And that's a concern. It comes out of the general fund. It's all we have. And so when I shared with you that 84% of the general fund equates to people, salaries, benefits, you have to look in negotiations how you can make up that difference, because you have to purchase a boiler if a boiler goes down and it's necessary. And so what happens in that situation is that concessions perhaps need to be made unilaterally throughout the district, and that makes it hard to retain top caliber educators, because you want your salaries and benefits, just like the private sector or anywhere, to be competitive, and Grosse Pointe wants them to be a place where we attract that 88% of teachers and who are above master's degree. Not every district can say that, and in fact, I don't know this, so I have no data to back this up, but I would suspect that not many districts can say that. So we have great educators, but we also have great support staff. We have great custodians. We just have a really great group of people who live in Grosse Pointe, who love this school district. I think our facilities, if you've been in any of them, are clean and pristine. And that only happens if you have the resources, monetary resources, as well as the physical resources, the people, to do that, to keep these Grosse Pointe at the stellar school district that it continues to be.
All right, I'm going to read this one, but it's hard to read the writing, so it might take me a minute. Can you address the school district's plans to improve educational excellence and achievement among students at all grade levels in the face of what some have perceived as declines in our schools, as in rankings in the state and access and across the country?
I'm not sure what they're referencing, because I don't know specifically, but I know one of our high schools was just ranked by U.S. World News and Report, I think number 11th, but it was fourth. It was number 11th in all schools, which is all private schools, but it was like fourth in public schools. But I see a school district, and I think our scores, we've shown them repeatedly at board meetings, and I think that I've put the highlights in green where we've improved in areas that we need to continue to look to improve, and we're always doing that, whether via curriculum, whether we do supports or interventions with students. I will tell you that having been in other districts, the amount of support and interventions provided to our students in Grosse Pointe, again, I would put up against any other district. On the flip side of that, I think it's really important that when you say all students, we have students on the other end of the spectrum who need support and that they are ready to go, and we can't hold students back. And that's always been a soapbox of mine, is that you have students who sit in classrooms and who are bored and need to be challenged. So I'm going to speak for myself for a moment, but I always think districts need to be a district of opportunities for every student to reach their potential. And I'll use myself as an example. Although I wish I was a great artist, for whatever reason, I would say I have a roadblock in my brain to do so. I would certainly need support if I was going to be an artist. But it's important in K-12, pre-K-12, to expose students to a variety of opportunities so they can decide, or they can figure out what they're good at, what they love, what they're passionate, so that they can move forward in that. And I'm going to take a moment for this one, Kathy, if you don't mind. I'm going to give an example of that. One of my children would say that I forced them to take a culinary art class in high school. And they said they absolutely disliked it, they didn't learn anything, yada, yada, complain. And my response to that was, knowing what you don't like is equally as important as knowing what you do like. Because a lot of times people think they don't like something, but they've never tried it. So yeah, you tried it, you didn't like it. Conversely, you took a construction trade class and loved it, and you didn't want to be in that one either. So I always think of pre-K through 12, which is free to the students, not necessarily to the parents, I get that, but is just opportunities to explore. And so we're always looking for curricular ways to add to our curriculum, but it's a balancing act. You can't budgetarily have 5 kids in a class. So it comes to maybe something is no longer relevant, and so you add another class, whether it's a biomedical science class or CTE class, an engineering class. There are so many opportunities out there that we could look at for that.
Okay, this is, change gears. Can this bond money go directly to a permanent, safe, and secure bus stop for the students from Harper Woods?
And that's a good question.
And how will the bond be used to directly support the students from Harper Woods and those new Harper Woods students who will be living in the Fraser Square development?
Yes, great question. Dr. Bishop, if many of you know, is the deputy superintendent, and he's already been working on that, changing the location of the bus stop, because it already has been changed for safety and security purposes. So we're very much aware of that concern and how that came to fruition. And as far as the students in Fraser Square and in Harper Woods, they're going to benefit from everything that's in all of our buildings, whether it's the HVAC, whether it's safety and security. They will receive the same benefits as all of our students will in all of our schools in Grosse Pointe. But specifically, we are very aware of the traffic concerns, and we're constantly monitoring that. And I want to give Dr. Bishop kudos for that, because he's been over there several times, worked with Auxilio to try to make a safe place for those students.
Okay, I think this will be the last one, because I'm seeing repetition. Okay. Where do we get information on the money spent for the existing millage and, if passed, the forthcoming millage? And are there regular updates on how the money is being spent? For example, is it on the budget or whatever? I guess someone wants to know where's the best place to keep track of money in, money out.
For sure.
Expenses.
I think these boards are a great starting point because they show you, we delineate which pot of money, so to speak, is being taken care of, whether it be the bond or the sinking fund, and which year they were passed. Additionally, if you're invested in board meetings, you will see bids come across. You will see the discussions that occur about, hey, we have $25 million in the first series. What are the priorities for that? So if you're involved in the community, you're going to hear that. And then, as I said, Mrs. Fannin she doesn't like me to say this, so I won't look at her. She rolls her eyes at me behind the screen, but she is the world's best communications director, in that if you're into social media, you'll find stuff there. If you read the Grosse Pointe News, there's always stuff in there. She sends out emails to families and parents and community members, snail mail. You all should have received things, so we try to inform the community the best we can in a variety of different methods to do so.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have any final comments you'd like to make? Or you talked out?
What? Am I talked out? No. I love talking about education, so I'm never talked out. But I just, again, want to reiterate, I want to thank each and every one of you and those who are listening online for your continued support of the Grosse Pointe Public Schools. They are what they are because of you sitting in this audience, and that Grosse Pointe community supports education, and it shows. It shows for the legacy, those of you who come back. It shows for the students who go away to college and think they want to run away from Grosse Pointe and then realize, wow, this is a really special place, and perhaps that defines some of you who did the same thing. But it happens because of the people in front of your kids, the people cleaning the buildings, the people taking care, the people working up on stage in the board, and your facilities have to match your quality of education. And I think that our facilities, as I said, are historic, they're majestic, but they're expensive to upkeep, and if you want to maintain that, there's a cost to that, and we hope that you will support that as well. So, and thank you for coming out this evening. Thank you.
I just have a few final notes. Again, this forum will be available for viewing on the League of Women Voters of Grosse Pointe YouTube page within a few days. So if you want to watch again or point it out to other people, because I think there's a lot of information presented this evening. Also, the League of Women Voters has an online voter guide covering all the races this November. It is vote411.org and is linked to our website, which is lwvgrossepointe.org. You probably already know that absentee ballots have been available since September 24th. You can mail yours back, but we recommend use this option if there are at least 2 weeks before the election. If it's later than that, you should use the drop box outside your city hall. And finally, since you're here, you already probably know, Election Day is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. I'd like to thank Dr. Tuttle again, and to you, our audience, for your gracious attention. So good night and have a good evening.